counseling, we'll do some talking, some notes and introductions. Okay, so name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Loving Father, on this first Sunday of Lent, we just ask that you continue to offer us much grace and mercy as we move forward. In a particular way, we are asking that you continue to guide us as administrators, guide us as counselors, as parents, and especially as students as we prepare to go through the college application process, and certainly as we prepare to write our college essay. So may we kind of just continue to open our hearts to this process, our minds, and truly discover where you are calling us as we move forward throughout the next year or so. And in your name, as we pray all things, amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Ms. Reardon, it's all you.
Okay, I'm going to use the mic so you can hear me. Just a couple of reminders. So how many of you have not scheduled or had your college conference yet? Okay, you need to do that. ASAP. Go home today and get that scheduled. If Mr. Morton is your college counselor, he will be here on Tuesday. And make sure you touch base with him and get that conference scheduled. If it's one of us, we all have sign-up geniuses, and you can find those on PowerSchool or just email your college counselor, one of us, and we'll send you the link, right? Also, some of you who had conferences had not completed the pre-conference questionnaire before those. You need to make sure that's done. We mine that questionnaire for information to help us write your letter of recommendation. So the better job you do on your end, the better job we can do on our end. And along those lines, parents, if you have not completed your parent brag sheet yet, we really need those as well. Nobody knows your son as well as you do. Tell us some good stories, right? And remember, it's a recommendation, a parent brag sheet, so we don't want to know that his room is messy. Let's see. Anything else I need to remind him about? Alicia, can you think of anything? I think that's about it. We might have another program later this spring called Case Studies, where we give you some real applicants and you get to figure out who you're going to admit, who you're going to deny, who you're going to waitlist. So we have to plan that yet, but I'll send an email when we're ready to do that. So we are so fortunate to have President Jim Kubacki doing this program for us today. Jim he's read, I don't know, thousands and thousands and thousands of essays. He was with Harvard in admissions, Fordham in admissions, and then senior associate dean at Princeton. He did this program for us before, and he's tremendous. I think his materials are all copyrighted, so I don't think you can share them with the world. But you might have to ask him first before you send those to your friends. So, but anyhow, please give Jim Kubacki a warm welcome, and thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Reardon. Can you all hear me all right if I do this? And all I ask is that you not talk during this. You can fall asleep if you can't talk. Since there are a fair number of parents here, let me, I'm kind of a college junkie, by the way, so I really do enjoy this stuff. Since there are a number of parents here and online, I do want to offer you the parent rule with students and students with parents. And that is that colleges actually like it when a student can pick up the phone and schedule their own visit and, take the initiative to do all these things and keep really good records on when due dates are and all that good stuff, right? And we also have, obviously, I think the best college counseling folks in the country, and I put a lot of effort into that because of my background. I know how important it is. But it's too important. So if you don't do what you're supposed to do, you would expect your parents to step in, okay? Because college is that important. So that's the deal. That's what I would coach you on, parents. If the student can handle it and meets their deadlines and stays on top of their work, cheer them on. If they don't, then I think you have permission to step in and make sure it gets done. Is that fair? Okay. I do think there's a lot about, that I like to do to demystify this process, right? You hear so many things and so much of it is never accurate, to be perfectly honest. So I like to take a little bit of, maybe step back a little bit, look at the big picture, and then really talk about why we're here. I would tell you, having done this for, 40 years now or something, I try to frame it a certain way. I try to get you to sit back and reflect and do these things. And if you really do the process the way I think I'm asking you to do it, it works. You end up with a good essay that you can feel good about and everything else. So I hope you find it useful. I'm going to sort of take that approach. So there's an old adage, right? Control what you can control. Don't worry about what you can't control, right? That's a fair statement, hard to live, but fair statement. There are only 3 things in this process you can control, all right? You can control your record, you can control the college search, and you can control the application process itself. And I want to just talk briefly about those, just to give sort of an overview, so you kind of get context as we move on to the essay. Your record consists of 3 major pieces, right? So you've chosen courses, and you're about to choose one more time, right, or 2 more times in semesters. So what did you choose to take? How did you choose to challenge yourself? And how well did you do, right? How did you perform? I will tell you that that's called the transcript, right? That's where your grades and come out. That is the single most important piece of information. And think about this, right? If you take a test, right? You've all taken tests, and again, now there's a lot of craziness around testing because of COVID, right? And a lot of people are not demanding it, requiring it. But think about that, right? A test is 3 hours out of your life. I don't know if you felt great when you get up in the morning. I don't know if you got lost. I don't know if you're sick. I don't know anything. So it's kind of a snapshot of you in one moment in time. Your transcript is you day in, day out, going to class, doing your homework, sort of owning your own learning. So when you talk about the academic record, the transcript is the #1 piece of information that any college will look at, right? Now, what's important about that is you have 2 semesters that are very critical, right? This semester and your first semester senior year. Frankly, second semester senior year is to really just prove that you belong and don't fall off the table there. Although the guy I worked for at Princeton, he denied a kid in June because the kid got like all D's. He just blew off the semester. And he wrote him back and said, "Come back next year when you show us some maturity." So you got that academic record. Then there's a non-academic record, and that's kind of important too because these places are communities, right? Schools are communities, and they ask the question, what do you do when you're not studying, right? How do you spend your time? And as importantly, how are you going to impact our community when you come here? So it's important to even think about that now. You know, and again, when we say, what do you do when you're not studying? Some people work. Some people do things like scouting. Some people do very traditional extracurriculars. You know, Model UN's going on, rugby's going on, basketball's going on. You know, those kinds of things. The performances tonight for their orchestra. Do you want the water, by the way?
Thank you, sorry.
No, I just want to be sure, okay. And so, you know, so that is what's your commitment, right? Is there a commitment to service? Is there a commitment to being engaged in the community? So even if you're not right now, it's not a bad idea to think about that a little bit, right? You're not just trying to put a list together of things, because even when, you know, some people put out 20 different things, and we could care less. I want to know, where do you spend your time? What do you actually commit to, right? What are you doing to make a difference? And so what are those 2 or 3 or 3, whatever things that make a commitment? And then there's a personal record. Some people, colleges use this, some don't necessarily. They kind of fold it in. But, you know, what are your personal qualities? How have you grown in the last 4 years? What's your leadership potential? Can you show any demonstrating in that? But I always ask the question, if my son was going to the school, would you be a good roommate? You know, do I even want you on campus? A couple of stories around that. We had a kid who he loved chemistry, and he started talking about chemistry and ended up blowing manhole covers off of, you know, streets. And it's kind of like, you know, do I really want this guy on my campus? You know what I mean? Like, we have enough, you know, yeah. So those are the record, right? Your academic, non-academic, and personal. The college search, you spend now some time thinking about that. By the end of summer, you really should be zeroing in on, okay, where am I going to be applying? And obviously there's this range of schools, right, that based on your record, you can get into these schools. There's, based on your record, you're competitive, right? And now you just fight it out. And based on your record, there's the reach schools, right, that nobody belongs to get into because they're so selective. So you want some mix there, but you want to get that to the end of by the end of the summer. And I think I put up the good news is 95% of students love where they go to college if they just do the homework right? If they just take the time to do this process. So I kind of tell you, I said, look, from now till, December, January next year, you almost in the back of your mind have this little thing, extra course called college, right? And you just sort of be constantly sort of there, that you're constantly doing a little work, trying to keep moving forward on that. And I tell students the following. If you conduct a very thorough search, right, and really think through this the way we're going to talk about it in a little bit here, and you come back and you say, I've done my work and I want to go to Cleveland State, that's the best choice for me, I would say that's awesome. First of all, I like what Cleveland State does. Some of the smartest people I've ever met went to Cleveland State, by the way, who work here. But if you come back and say, hey, you know what, my girlfriend's cousin's brother went to Cleveland State and they said it's a really good place, so I think I'm going to go there. Not a really good way to go about preparing for college. So, my advice is to, again, control what you can control, and you can control that search. So take the time, do your homework, think about yourself, which we're going to talk about here. And then think about college in a way as a set of probabilities, right? So if you sort of say, okay, I want to do research. I want to do a year abroad. I want to be in the orchestra. I want to play rugby. I want to, all these things that are important to you. What's the probability of you getting to do that at this college or that college or another college, right? So try and match your own interests and your own abilities to those different colleges. One piece of advice I'm going to tell you right now, and I did it with my kids and it worked. By the way, there's one phrase that I hate with a passion, and you hear it a lot. We don't use it, right? I don't believe. And if you ask a kid, right, go, where do I want to go to school? This was when I was at Princeton. Well, I really want to go to Princeton, but my safety school is X, right? You've heard that, some of you have heard that term. I hate that term, because it's like, why are you settling, right? What I want you to do is find a school or two or three based on your ability you can get into tomorrow, and you'd love to go there for 4 years. That's your biggest homework, right? Because what you do now is in the fall, apply, get in. And you know what? You're going to see this piece of paper and go, I'm going to college, right? And all that pressure just kind of goes away. And now you wait and see, okay, how did I do in the different places I applied? And then what are the options? And then I can make a family decision at that point, right? So your attitude is actually kind of critical of this, right? So I hate that word about that phrase about settling, it's just not, it's not important. What's important is that you go to a college, and I'm a big believer in self-fulfilling prophecies, right? Just like when you were in 8th grade. If you wanted to come to St. Ed's, guess what? You're going to do well here. If you didn't want to come here and your parents made you come here, you probably wouldn't do well here, right? Because you find reasons to not like it. So it's the same with college. If you expect to go to a college, expect to really enjoy the experience, really get engaged, you're going to. And you'll weather the storm of ups and downs like you would here for your 4 years. But the reason you apply to a range is because you cannot control who else applies, right? You don't know who else is in that pool, and you don't know how they're putting their class together. There's no one factor to rank kids. There just isn't, right? There's no one way to say, oh, that's number 1, that's number 500. It's the application itself, right? And what they're trying to do with their class and how they're assembling the class, so that just like here, you'll learn from each other as much as you learn from the teachers. So that's the first two: your record, the search, and then the application process itself. And there's a couple things to keep in mind. One is you have to treat every college independently, right? They have a right to do it their way. They have a right to set their own deadlines. They have a right to ask their own questions. And you just have to honor that, right? You have to treat each one separately. And I would get a big binder, and get, different files for each college you apply to, so you're aware of their deadlines, you're aware of what they're asking for. But basically, you're going to fill out an application. The counselors here are going to write a rec, and then the transcripts and test results and all that, and go in. You'll ask a teacher or two to write a recommendation for you, and that will be mostly about your academic life and approach, but it also will add some personal. And then there's this thing called the personal essay, all right? And we like to tell you that even if you're going to apply to a school that doesn't ask for it, we still think you should send it. because they don't have to read it. But if they're trying to decide between kids, right, I'd rather you get your story out there and you feel good about telling your own story. And we'll talk about that in a minute too. So let's talk about the personal essay. And like I said, I've been doing this a long time. And I think there's a right way to do it to help you get a good essay. So what is the personal essay? Well, the college now is starting to assemble pieces of information about you, right? They've got your grades and this and your activities and your test scores and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of that's kind of two-dimensional, right? It's just informational, right? And they have a good sense of the information. As people write about you, that's why the parent information, is helpful to the college counselors, right? Because we're trying to start to develop you as a person. What we used to call it at Princeton, it was like, we want to write a word portrait. Just think about that. I want a word portrait of this kid. And you want to be able to present yourself in some sort of a word portrait. And again, some schools will ask you a very specific question. You have to answer that. You have to do it their way. But the Common App in most schools will give you a generic kind of like, hey, use this space to tell us about yourself, right? So what the essay is then, it's your attempt to start to put some meat on the bones, right? You got this structure about who you are and the two-dimensional stuff. And the essay is kind of your way to start to round that out and put your own sense of it. And they're going to answer the question, who is this guy? And what makes this guy tick, right? So think about that as we go down this. What is the essay not? It's not an English essay, all right? If you're writing an expository or you're trying to make a case, you're not writing some formal, hey, let me show you how well I write type of essay. It's not that at all. And it's not a rehash of your resume. They have your resume, all right? So you're not just going to go through this and list things. Let's think of it more as a conversation, all right? Think of that concept. So it's a conversation. So first and foremost, you don't know who's going to read it, right? You don't know, no idea who's going to read it, what their background is. You don't know who's going to read it after them, what their background is. So you can't write it for somebody else, right? You really can't. You have to write it kind of for yourself. And the other way I think about it is, let's say there is this unknown admission person sitting out there, and I said, knock that person down. And I said, okay, let's sit down for an hour and talk. Let's just have a conversation, right? Let's have an hour, just sit down and talk. And at the end of that time, like, what would you want me to know, right? I mean, if you're trying to guide a conversation, like, what do you think I should know about you that would be relevant? And when we get done with this section, as I try to frame it, we're actually going to do some of this. We're going to apply these and actually get some good writing. So we're going to put some time in before we let you go, so you get something on paper that you can take in your hand when you leave here today. But obviously you can't list the qualities in an essay, right? Hey, I'd like you to know I'm this, 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 and this. So what are you trying to do? Well, you're trying to find a story or an activity or something that you care about to kind of demonstrate some of those qualities of what makes you tick. All right, is that a fair thing? So that's what we're going to start talking now. So a couple points to get started. Few people like to talk about themselves. To this day, I hate talking about myself. Always have, always will. But it's just like talking about St. Ed's, we tend to be humble, right? What we do here is say, you know what? They won't know unless you tell them, right? You don't have to be cocky about it. Matter of fact, I assure you should not be. But they won't know unless you tell them, right? You have to take the time to tell them. So the phrase I use here with our admission folks is, we're going to shout with humility. We're going to be humble, but we're going to let you know. Here's what we're about. Here's what you're about. So you got to get over that piece. The other way to think about it, and you may have heard this phrase or not, but there's a phrase called selective schools. Anybody ever hear that? So the highly selective schools are like the MITs and the Notre Dames and the Ivies and those kinds of places, right? That really nobody should get it. They're just, you just take your shot and you see what you did there. Well, when you really think about it, how would you define a selective school? My definition is pretty simple. If that college has one more application, right? One more application than they do spots, they're now choosing you over somebody else, right? Just by definition. So my point is, you now are in selling mode, right? And again, you're not trying to oversell yourself, but you're now in trying to put your best foot forward because you are now competing for that spot. And by the way, that's virtually every school in the country, right? It's got more applications than they do spots. So you're going to want to, again, take the time and do this essay well so that you can tell your story and present yourself to where you feel good about it, to be honest with you. It's the first time you're going to do this, right? After college, guess what? You're going to apply for jobs, you're going to interview, you're going to write a cover letter, you're going to write a resume, and you're going to be doing this all the rest of your life, right? Well, it's kind of the first time you get to do this. It's the first time you get to actually represent yourself, both in writing and sometimes they even interview in person as well. So think of those two things. Think of the fact that you need to talk about yourself, and two, that you're fighting for that spot. Here's what's most important about just the framework or frame of mind I want you to start to get into as we talk here today. We all write much better when we care about what we're writing about. Is that a fair statement, right? I mean, you're gonna write better because you care, right? I don't know, we're gonna get to what that is in a minute, but you're gonna write more naturally, right? It's gonna come to you much better. It's gonna be more conversational. It's gonna mean something to you. And guess what? When you write on a topic that you care about and you're writing more naturally, you're more relaxed. And honestly, you come off as more mature. Because again, it's you knowing yourself, right? And getting across some aspect about yourself. So I think that's very important. So how do we even start this process? And again, we're not going to do it too much today, but we are going to do it a little bit just to give you a feel for it. It involves self-reflection, right? And you know, it's too cold out, so otherwise I'd tell you to go sit under a tree and start contemplating the world. But it's a fact that teenagers don't tend to be self-reflective. I think our guys are more self-reflective than most, by the way. But you know, you're all on this treadmill, right? You're going to school, and then you go into activities, and you go home, and then you go back, and you do it all over again, and you're just kind of going from one thing to another, and you don't have that much time to step back and really think about yourself, and what am I doing, and where am I going, and why am I going? And so I think this is the first requirement of the essay process, is to find time to step back off the treadmill and think about this a little bit. We're going to do that today. And I think it's important to look at, you know, think about your values and think about who you are, where you want to be, and why you want to be, and how's college going to actually affect that, right? So I think that's the sort of the framework that I want you to try to get into today. Try to relax, just, you know, take a deep breath, and we'll talk through this a little bit. But you know, what I also have is a personal inventory. You know, it's just sort of a 8-page, you know, answer all these questions, and we're going to post that. So if you want to go back and do that, and then it'll prime the pump a little bit, right? You know, about certain things in your life that might be interesting, might be good topics to choose from. And again, we'll talk about that in a little bit here. The other thing I would tell you is when you find a topic, and we're going to try and find a couple later when we do the exercise, when you start out writing an essay, my advice is to write everything you can think about. I mean, just write, right? Whatever the topic is, you just write. And just write everything you can think about, even if it's all kinds of pages long, because you're going to go back and you're going to edit it later, right? And get it down to a really tight essay. And again, we're going to talk about that in a minute. So let's talk about this essay thing. I call the myth of the killer essay, right? I hear all these people who think they got it in because they wrote a great essay. Sorry, it just doesn't happen that way. You know, I mean, it's like I said, you gotta show up in the transcript. You gotta show up. You know, you gotta show up here, having done what you need to do in the classroom and in the community. So I think the fact that this magical essay showed up and you were now this great kid is probably, first of all, it should take some pressure off you that you're not trying to, you're not trying to get the golden ticket here. And we would look at them and say, you know, most essays are perfectly fine. They're just a good essay. It fits well with what the application is telling us. It can do you a disservice if all of a sudden it's really sloppily written and there's poor grammar, and it obviously didn't take a lot of time with it. That can actually work against you. I think over the years, thinking of I would read At Princeton, back then, now they got even more, but we probably get 20,000 applications, right? I would read 13 hours a day this time of year. Probably take me that long to do about 22 to 25 applications, right? To actually get through them thoughtfully. And I always thought it was like reading short stories, right? Each one is unique by definition, right? You're unique by definition. No you has ever existed in the history of man. But it's trying to think of, topics that are interesting. The one that I always remember is this girl wrote about Sunday dinner. They were a typical family, right? Everybody's going in different directions. But Sunday dinner, they were together and they sat down to dinner and they talked and they had this great time. And it sounds like such a mundane topic, right? But guess what? I learned so much about this kid because it was real. You can tell she really did enjoy it, and she, there are a lot of values hidden in that, obviously. But it was an essay that worked for her. Don't ask me why. There's a kid who worked at a restaurant called Autolots, and I always remember that. And Autolots is Toledo spelled backwards. And I have no idea. I have no idea if these guys ever got in, but I thought it was very interesting. I would tell you this: it's really hard to be original. Right? Some people go, well, I need to find that original, that really kind of out there cool thing. Guess what? It's really hard to be original when there's 25,000 people writing, essays. So again, I think it's more about turning inward and talking, and writing for you and writing about you in your own words and about whatever you care about. Example I would tell you, and it sounds awful actually, but it also date me, but I was doing admissions in the late 90s, right? Well, what happened 18 years before that? Well, Vietnam fell, right? That was when Vietnam fell. And these families, these horrible situations, these families were called the boat people, right? They had to get in these boats and just get out of there, South Vietnamese, and they had to get past the Thai pirates on the coast, and then they got to some place and eventually got to America. I mean, really harrowing experience. And I remember going, gosh, I have to read one more essay about the boat people, which you think is the most unique thing ever. Well, I've read 10s and 20s and 30s of those. And again, they were very powerful, and I don't want to underestimate that, but it's just hard to be original, is my point. I've heard people tell Catholic kids don't write about Kairos. All the Catholic kids read about Kairos. I don't agree. If that's really important and you had an experience like that you want to talk about because it meant to you, why wouldn't you do it? Why not, right? Because again, it's yours. It's not some generic essay on history of Kairos. It's why you found that important and interesting in your life. So I think how you go about choosing these topics is, again, if you care, right? Just if you think of nothing else today, if you care about the topic, you're going to write much better, and you're going to write with much more feeling. Not that you want to wear your emotions on your sleeve, you don't want to be this big, too honest sometimes, but you do. You want to sort of, tell your story in your words. How long should this thing be? Anybody have any ideas? Sort of curious. Huh?
5 to 10.
Okay, I've heard that a lot actually, 5 to 10 pages. The facts are no, and wasn't set up. Think about what I've got to do as an admission person, right? I got to read 13 hours a day, and so I believe very strongly that this thing should be a page and a quarter, maybe a page and a half, right? If you just can't whittle it down anymore. And again, some schools now will give you character numbers, right? Do not exceed this or that. But again, because of the time I have, and I got to get through this stuff, this has got to be that tight a piece of writing is my point. And so, if you're going to write an 8-page paper, you better be Hemingway. I mean, you really better be, because I don't want to sit there all day and read this stuff. To be perfectly honest, that's why it's going to take. I think if you do this process correctly, it'll probably take 5 or 6 drafts. I always tell you, so we did an admission video at Princeton, for admissions, and it was with Toni Morrison was one of the pieces. And I don't know if you guys read Toni Morrison. She grew up right here in Lorraine, but one of the best writers in American history. And Toni Morrison taught creative writing at Princeton. So it's her sitting with this girl who's writing a novelette or whatever as part of her work. And the scene is like she's talking to this girl. She said, okay, there's this old man walking across a courtyard. All right, so you can imagine that. And Toni Morrison goes, now, like, how was he walking? Was he like shuffling? Or is he like doing this, like, what exactly was he doing, right? You know, so try to picture you're trying to zero in on nailing that down. This essay, by the time you get to a 5th or 6th draft, should be literally, does this word add, does this word not add, and is that type a piece of writing? The important question we always asked was, does it fit? So I've got people writing, I've seen stuff, you know, I'm starting to get ideas about you by reading your application, and I want to know if it fit. And guess what, there's books out there, you can buy all these books, there's a book called Essays at Work, right? All these smart Harvard kids thought they, you know, were so smart they got in because they're essays. I've read them and I go, it's fine, I have no idea if it works, because I don't know if it fits, right? I don't need context of why this kid wrote that. And so that's where, if you're doing it for yourself and very thoughtfully, it'll come across well. Because think about this, we used to always say, what are the threads that run through this kid's application, right? What are the threads that kind of run through it? And I think it's important that you again, very, very much writing a piece for yourself. I obviously say that a lot. Another example, I had a kid who wrote how funny he was. And didn't write anything funny. I good sense of humor, I think, right? Didn't have any funny, didn't write anything funny. Nobody said he's funny, right? I mean, nobody said, hell, this kid's funny as heck, you know? And you kind of sit there and go, I've got a problem here, right? I've got a bit of a disconnect. This young man is not seeing himself the way other people are seeing him. Therefore, I probably have a maturity problem, right? So again, think about, you know, you being honest with yourself and you not trying, this isn't the time to try to become a creative writer. If you're a creative writer, great. You know, if that's your style, great. But not the time to start experimenting. Another one, you know, if you're a kid who says, God, you know, I just love politics. I'm a political junkie. Fine. Doesn't matter what side, you know, but I'm a political junkie. Okay. I'm gonna go back right away and go, this kid ever volunteer for a campaign? This kid do Molly Webb? This kid ever, you know, what have you done to prove to me that this is what you're about? So again, does it fit or does it not, is the question that keeps coming back. So you don't want that disconnect. The voice is important. I think I probably got that across 20 times already. That's sort of conversational, but not slangy, you know. And please don't say me and my friends. You know, you actually have to use proper English. You know, I think you don't want to be used, you know, it's not the time to get the thesaurus out and pick a bigger word than a smaller word, right? You know, we've all done that before. I remember reading stuff at Princeton and I take it to like a colleague and I go, either I'm like really stupid, this guy's brilliant, right? Or they're really dense, you know, and I can't even read this stuff. And invariably they go, you know, the guy's dense, you know, it makes no sense. So good writing tends to be short, right? Clip sentences, you know, very boom, boom, boom. Matter of fact, not a lot of jargon. You know, you're not trying to impress people. You're just trying to be yourself. Like I said, if you're a creative type and you like writing creative pieces, that's perfectly fine, you know. If it's not your style, don't feel like you have to, right? Our biggest joke was you'd ask a question and then the first thing would be, it was a dark and stormy night, you know. You go, okay, that's a little too much. And as I said already, we're not trying to impress here. That's the important thing. By being yourself, you will impress. Does that make sense, dude? So you're not trying to prove to them that you're this, that, or the other thing. And a couple examples. There's a great line from Mark Twain, and he said, sometimes the worst piece of advice you can tell somebody is just be themselves. You know, it's obviously the guy's a little goofy, but our advice is always, if you want to help yourself, be yourself, right? So you just want to be yourself when you do this. The dean I had, that was my boss at Princeton, I learned very quickly that he admitted and we rejected, but he always said, the quickest guy I ever admitted. This he used to be at Stanford at the time. He said, it was a young guy who wrote, you will notice my SATs are a bit low. They are accurate. Right? He's like, I'm not a good tester. The kid goes, they're accurate, man. Here's who I am. If you don't like it, then that's fine. If you like it, fine. But I'm not going to try to be someone I'm not. I'm just going to be who I am. So our goal as we leave today, and we're going to get to work in a minute here after I take any questions, is going to be to have a draft, a pretty darn good draft by the end of the summer, all right? And frankly, why? Because you want to enjoy your senior year, That's number one. I mean, you can do it senior year too, nobody cares. But if you do it junior year, if you do it before you even start, guess after the last year in 3 months, you're gonna want to enjoy your senior year, right? We hope we'll be able to do that. So take the time now to do it. There's no pressure on you. You get a chance to slip off the side and think about things and write and rewrite. And I think you'll be happy with the way you come out, the way the essay comes out. 2 final goals are a piece of advice for you. When you're done, when you think you've got it to a certain point, I would have 2 people read it. Somebody who writes really well, right? So obviously an English teacher, but somebody who writes really well to read it, to really make sure it's tight and grammar and all that's taken care of. Because again, when you're so into something, sometimes you don't even see, mistakes. You just don't. You're too involved. And the second one is somebody who knows you well to read it, right? And if a person reads the essay and go, that's you. That's you. I get a good sense of because I know who you are. I get a good sense of you. Then you know you're in a pretty good spot, right? You've done something that makes sense. Again, my old boss at Princeton, his favorite line was, "Well begun is half done." So if we can get out of here with something down on paper, I think we'll be happy. Let me do this. Let me stop and ask any questions, and then I'm going to pass out a sheet, an exercise. I'm going to do the exercise right here. And again, I know some people have to go or come and go, whatever. That's totally up to you. I would assume we'd be out of here in a half hour, 40 minutes. You stay all day if you want, but I know people come and go and have things to go. All right, any questions on that? That's a lot to cover. Anyway,
So a lot of selective schools ask for an additional essay on a specific topic
Right.
that they release.
right.
How does that play into what you're saying about the myth of the killer essay?
So there are schools that will have very specific questions, right? And we did at Princeton, by the way. So the essay is kind of your choice. The smaller essays are kind of our choice, I guess. And so the first thing I tell you is answer the question. You'd be amazed at how many people don't actually answer just answer the question. But I think what the advantage is it gives you much more play on what you choose for essay, right? Because you're obviously I remember a kid, I was helping a friend of mine's cousin and nephew, and we were just talking about this stuff, and he was applying in college. And he was 2-time school president, right? He was on the history committee, he was on the whatever committee, right? And I kind of said, if you run for dorm council and lose, there's gonna be a suicide watch. Everything you showed me here is all this so narrow that I want to know that you're going to come and actually explore things and try things. And so I think in one way it gives you a chance to tell a different side of yourself. So I would complement the essays, right? In other words, don't write the same thing about 2 different essays in the same even area. I use it to try and get another angle about you into it. Does that answer your question? Because again, a lot of schools want, it's just another piece of information, another angle, way to talk about a range you have, especially a range of interest. Other things. Yeah.
How long I heard you talking about half a page or a page and a half to 2 pages. How long do you think is too long in an essay?
Well, I think I'm trying to think of, I always forget how many words are on a
60,
page.
so you hit the limit and it will automatically cut them off.
Well, nowadays they actually cut you off.
Yeah.
You have to have it in this thing. But I would try to, like I said, my original thing was to say, start this process by writing everything. I don't care if it's 10 pages, it won't be 10 pages, maybe it's 3 or 4 pages long. And then you go back and you start, I like this part, this goes here. I'm starting to see a flow, and you craft it. So I would say, obviously, the limit would be the first question. You want it to be tight into that limit. You don't want to just end mid-sentence. If they don't tell you, then probably a page and a half of a normal double space, and again, it's not a hard rule, but again, you start getting too wordy. That's why you got to do your homework. You just got to take the time to do it right. By the way, I'll tell you right now, I tell this every group, if you want to send me your essay at some point, just to have me check it out, I'm happy to do it. It's something I enjoy doing. The only caution would be, You know, don't say, hey, it's about you. Did you look at this essay? By the way, it's due like in 3 hours. You know, it's nice to know, they'll give me a week time. And then please don't write an essay if you just want me to tell you it's great. You know, if you want my feedback, I'll give you my feedback. But again, I'm trying to do some writing on my own these days, and man, you really need to really edit and edit and edit. And so your English teachers are right. Did that answer your question? All right. Anything else? Okay, so let's do the exercise. We're going to pass out a sheet. I'm going to go through it, and then you're going to start writing on it as we talk. And then some of it will be redundant.
And there's your
Okay.
there.
Some of it will be redundant, but
He's got a stack too. He's got a stack too.
as soon as we get everybody passed out, we will. You all good? These guys?
I think they have an anthem.
The prompt is on.
It's on there. Okay.
Go to the next
So if I go
slide.
to the next page, I'm okay. I didn't want to just go there until. Perfect. I just want to make sure that they can see it.
Everybody get one?
Some interesting little technology.
Everybody get one?
Either text or something's coming in.
All right. By the way, I mentioned that personal inventory that we're going to post. I just developed that a while back just for no reason, just to prime the pump a little bit. But if you're also, when you apply to colleges, if you're going to apply anywhere that actually interviews you, what I tried to throw in there was a lot of interview questions. So if you literally go through the personal inventory and write answers, right? Like, what's your favorite course? What's your favorite project? What's your, it's just stuff to get you to think. What's great, if you actually take the time to work through it and write out answers, when you get into an interview situation, right, you kind of prime yourself, right? And it's a lot easier to recall things because you thought about it and say, hey, what's the best, here's mine that I interviewed for my college. I always say, what do you read right now that's not required? Right, I always say, wow, great guess. No, what's not required that you're reading? And see what people say. And it's not ESPN, Sports Center, or whatever. But anyhow, it's questions like that will prime the pump. So, and I ask this too. I'll ask kids when I interview them. I'll say, hey, what would your friends, like, give me 4 adjectives your friends would use to describe you. So just to prime the pump now, literally I know there's a lot of people here, but kind of put yourself in your own world, step back a little bit, and start thinking about what's gone on in your life over the last 15 years, 16 years. And remember I said that if we had a conversation, I sat down, we just talked, right? Let's just chat, right? And at the end of that time, what do you hope I would know? So literally, I want you to write 4 things you'd like me to know. So we're doing our homework as we go here. So take a few minutes. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but we'll take a few minutes and just write, okay? Could be 4 words, 4 phrases, could be lots of things, but. Remember, who is this guy and what makes him tick? Right. When you've got 4, just kind of look up so I can get a sense of that we're getting somewhere.
When you said the safety things. don't
I was like,
say
I
that.
don't know,
We
do
definitely
we?
don't say that.
No, we don't. No, it was just really funny. We were
Oh,
both
so-
like,
We always say there should be,
That's
and we always say there should be schools that we know you'll get into that you'll love. Like,
yes.
it was just funny though, because we were like waiting, and then we're like, "Oh, nope, we're good.
We never say that. We're good here. We're good to go.
Sorry, I really was very kicked that too.
So we would never do
All right, how we doing? Getting there? Now, you're not getting graded. Nobody's gonna read it except you, so be honest with yourself, but again, you understand what I'm trying to do here, right? I'm trying to get you to start thinking about yourself a little bit more, right? And get off the treadmill, take a few minutes just to kind of say, all right, I'm serious. There's never in the history of the world been a you. There's people that maybe have similar interests or similar backgrounds or similar upbringings, but there has literally never been a you. And so that's why I said when I did admissions, I always thought of it like I'm reading short stories, because I'm reading these, everyone's new, right? Everyone's its own. And all I can do is honor that person and try and give them my time and get a sense of who that person is, right? And then how these other things fit together. All right, how about 30 seconds, then we're gonna move on. Oh, you could have 10 if you want, or 2. It's not, again, it's nobody's but your own. Are we good? Everybody look up if you've got a few done already, just so I can see. I want to make sure. Couple more seconds. Okay, let's keep moving just for time's sake and other people's time. Like I said, if you do this personal inventory, it hopefully will, prime the pump a little bit for you to think of things you might want to write about. You don't have to solve it today, I just want you to get started on. I'd like to come out with one idea. It may not even be one that works eventually, but I want you to come out with one. So when we really stop and think about it, right? So you've got this kind of like, okay, I know I sort of want to get this part of me across, right? Or this, here who I am. And now you're looking for a vehicle, right? A vehicle to tell your story. And again, think about it. I'm a admission person, right? I'm reading all these things all day long. You do want to make it interesting, right? So it's not a bad idea to come out with an opening line, right? That might be grab my attention. You've heard that in English class before, right? So think of it that way. You are in fact kind of, write a lively, something that's got some energy to it. But you really want to start thinking about all the experiences in your life, I'll be honest, some people have had really tough, really difficult experiences. And again, I think if you're comfortable writing about those, sometimes you have to be a little careful. You're not oversharing sometimes. But those can be great growth experiences and a great ability to handle things, or they just mean a lot to you because they were, impactful. I would not steer you away from doing that. On the other hand, like I said, I used the example that was a very mundane topic, but the girl got across kind of a lot about herself in a pretty small way. So there are life experiences that force you to grow up or show maturity, learn from your mistakes. Probably wouldn't be, actually I did have this one, the kid, I think it was here actually. I normally wouldn't, it actually worked. I'm trying to remember, I think it was here. And the opening line was, "I'll never forget the look on my mom's face from the back of the cruiser." I mean, normally you wouldn't say, "I just got arrested," but it was really interesting. Normally I'd say, "Oh, you don't want," but it worked. The guy, he obviously grown up. It was a couple of years earlier. He'd grown immensely from it, and clearly never wanted to hurt his mom again. But that was probably a case where I was like, holy moly. But then when you kind of get in it, you went, you know what? The kid, he was very honest, he was very honest about it. And again, how did I grow from it? And it seemed to work. But again, you might want to ask a couple people on some of those topics. But again, there's not really a wrong answer here, right? It's only your answer. So as you think about these things, and that's why I say, remember way back when I said, you almost have to write for yourself, right? Because you don't even know who the audience is, right? You just don't know that person. If it's your friend or English teacher, that person has some context to know you, but the admission people don't know you. So don't write for them, write for you. Does that make sense? I know I've said it a lot of times. And so you're just kind of looking for a vehicle. So if you think about all the different things that happened in your life, or even maybe it's just you fell in love with a class, a course, or something, or whatever, you're an Eagle Scout, I don't know, whatever you're into, what would that topic be? And can you come up with a couple possibilities? So what I'd like to do now is let's take maybe 10 minutes or so. I don't want to, I gotta be careful. I don't want you to keep you all day just to get something done. But on the other hand, if you can get into something and get something down with thought, it'll get you a good start. So I want to balance that up. But let's take 10 minutes and literally think about, I'd love you to at least come out with one topic, right? If you come out with 4, that's great too. Because you can write 4 and then decide, oh, this one doesn't work, this one does. Once you really get into it, there's nothing wrong with having a couple and then trying to figure out which ones are easier for you to communicate so that you feel you've been heard. So what's very important to me in this process, to be honest with you, is again, you can't control who else is applying, right? You cannot control that and how they're going to be viewed. And so I want you to have that application completed, let's say by November of senior year, everything's kind of tightened, buttoned down. And when you read through it, you go, I feel really good about how I'm presenting myself. And then I can't do anything else about it, right? As long as I've done a good plan, I'll get some choices. I may not get every choice I wanted, and that's just reality. You might not, but you'll get choices. And then you can make a decision based on, what really, how you compare and contrast. So it really, I want you at the end of the day to have an application that you feel really good about, right? And it represents you well. And so you feel like you've been heard, right? I'll even ask that when I interview kids. I'll say, is there something you wish you could have put down? That nobody asked you, you really wanted to talk about something, you couldn't get it in. And they may say, oh, by the way, I do this, that. I go, oh, okay, I can write that in. So, if there is something like that where maybe you have some other outside interest that's really powerful in your life, right, that doesn't have anything to do with St. Ed's, you can have a person like that write a letter for you. There's nothing wrong with that. I wouldn't do 5 of them, because all of a sudden now it looks like you're trying too hard, right? But again, if to make yourself heard, you get an extra one from outside or something like that, why not? They don't have to read it, right? But at least you feel like you've taken the steps that get you across, okay? Does that make sense, hopefully? All right, we're going to keep going here for a little bit, but if you've got a topic or a few, I would like you to just write a paragraph or 2. Just start, right? If you've got a topic, just start writing. And at least it gives you something when next time you pull it out and sit by yourself in a corner, you got to start, right? You just get started on this stuff, right? That's half the problem, is just getting started.
You're actually right, that's it. You're out, not your kids. How many have at least one topic that think they can at least work with? Very good.
We do, so we have them send their essay as a Google Doc to their English teacher for grammatical correction, psychology counselor for content, just so you know. And then we tell them they need to send it to someone that really knows them. Just so you know. Not here.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I've ever had it. I've had it since high school. I don't even know, because there's one in Shaker, so I told them.
So were you able, was my thing good enough?
No, it's perfect.
So-
Yep, and everyone online was calling it. I were to watch you and the PowerPoint.
Oh, good.
We did,
Yeah, we
presented it
presented it.
separately.
Yeah, so they were, but no, it was perfect.
And
You
both-
literally would say it, and I was like, oh, perfect.
It was so perfect, but yeah, I was like, nice.
It's like, I find out there's a third rate.
Yeah, yeah,
That's great too.
it was helpful, it was perfect. No, it was
Like I
so,
think.
And then this is recorded, so then we can post it on PowerPoint.
Yep.
Indeed. Don't try to close it, what is it? It goes here.
Anybody have any questions on it as you go? You do.
Yeah, I mean, you can stop recording now if you wanted, but, you know, I would keep it just. Okay. They're fine.
make it great,
That's perfect.
for us starting late too.
Yeah, it was perfect.
It was perfect, I was like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
No, I agree. The best thing about K's is their special sauce.
I don't know what I was saying.
Well, Sugar Creek will go to Crawford, like here.
I want to write it.
Yeah, seriously, it has been straight up, because it's in Shaker right there.
He's got to get,
Yeah, those places go to.
yeah, and then again, Desert Line, Desert Line.
There's never a place like that. I'm sure it's what, local. We need to get better about that.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying.
I was like, more.
I have no idea.
I'm guessing they're like, you were.
Yeah, I'll share.
How does it happen?
So earlier today, I messed up messages between you and my cousin. Oh, you come in Alicia, wait, no, she comes in, you both come in, like, oh, she's Alicia, you're Alicia, I'm like, oh, it's cool. Obviously. So I say you will message her.
It was just question mark.
That was your
Sorry.
question, not your question.
Oh, wait, no.
If I can, like, with you, whatever you said, I thought was from her, and I was like, I don't know. You said. And I thought this was for work. She was talking about dropping something off. And I was like, oh, yeah. So I got special marks, and I was like, oh my god, wrong person. Like, I was like, am I not saying this? Okay, great.
All right.